is going to fall out and land on the floor. You know, they're not physically capable of it. You know, it goes on and on. I mean, you know, the less crude variation of that is like, you know, the excuses are like noses. Everybody has one, and it's like that. It's like that for running. You know, there's always some reason why, you know, they can't do it, and most of that is just based a little bit on, you know, the fact that they might be a little bit older, and movement is, you know, as you get older, you know, joints get a little stiffer, and even if you're an Alexander teacher, you know, the Alexander community is not that active in terms of, you know, they don't exercise much, you know, they walk and they lean forward in the chair and occasionally do a monkey, but they don't really, as a group, I find, move very much, you know, and so if you don't do it, it's easy enough to sort of demonize it, and then, you know, which justifies your own fears of getting outside your comfort zone, you know, and so that's, at least in the Alexander community, that's what I come up with, and the great thing about, you know, about teachers is that if they can meet that fear, they have all the tools to, you know, run a little bit. You know, they're probably not going to run a marathon, but they can certainly coordinate themselves well enough to do a little bit of running and to, you know, in most cases, actually even enjoy it if they don't try too hard. The trouble with Alexander teachers, of course, is they're the biggest end gainers in the world, you know, and get them to slow down and think and, you know, and let it happen and not try too hard and, you know, not get pissed off when they don't get it right away. I mean, it's it's a challenge. The best people to work with are non-runners who come with an open mind. You can make them look like an Olympian in an hour and a half. The hardest people to work with in the running community are the people who've been running for 20 years. Very difficult to change them quickly because their habits, you know, they got thousands and thousands of miles in their legs, and that's hard to kind of change. It just feels too foreign and you know, too strange for most experienced runners to let something else happen quickly. And I find they have to be really motivated to want to change. But yeah, the biggest myths are, you know, that running is bad for you, and that if you're a certain age, you know, you're too old to do it, or, you know, yeah, I think that would probably cover quite a you know, percentage of the population I see at least.
What do you think of the book Born to Run?
I really enjoyed it. You know, I think the guy who wrote it, you know, is a better writer than he is a runner, but he's revolutionized the running world. He's done more. You know, that book has done more to kind of repopularize running and to have people think about running form and to really challenge the running establishment, which, you know, said that you need to wear a pair of shoes that basically control what your foot does, and you know, if you buy those shoes, you know, you're going to be famous by Friday. And he's done more. I think his book has done more to challenge that than anything in the last you know, 25 years. I mean, it's fantastic as far as that goes. But now it's you know, and so as far as the book goes, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great story, and I recommend it. I recommend that, you know, people with whom I work have a look at it. But the guy sort of positioned himself now as a bit of a running guru, and he's not. You know, he's a crap runner who's improved his running a little bit. He's a very good. I think he's a very good writer. But and he's worked with you know, he's worked with a few coaches, and you know, he seems to have improved things a little bit. And he's now discovered, you know, what some of us, you know, who've been working in this with this for the last 20 odd years, he's just discovered it. So with the fanaticism of conversion, and you know, and good writing skills, he's out there saying, you know, guess what I found? out. Running form is important. Oh, isn't that great? Good for you. You know, and but he's managed to do it and put it out there, and all of a sudden, lots of people are jumping on that bandwagon, and lots of people are now starting to think about, you know, less is more in terms of footwear. And I think it's, you know, I mean, running sort of maybe needed a bit of a shot in the arm because, you know, it's not that sexy a sport, to be honest with you, you know. And so his book really opened it up. I think it's great.
Don't most running coaches say you can't change someone's form?
Absolutely. And I think that probably if you don't have the skills, let's say of an Alexander teacher or of a really good coach, they're probably right. It's like try to change any habit. You know, why do Alexander teachers train for 1,600 bloody hours and just to get to the starting gate? It's because habit is very hard to change, and especially with something as unconscious as our gait. You know, very hard to change. And so I think that, as I say, unless you're a very skilled coach or an Alexander teacher who's, you know, trained and, you know, to both understand, who's gone through a change process themselves, and who's been trained to actually, you know, be able to use their, you know, their skills to help people change, I think that's probably true. Difficult, if not almost impossible. To change. Now, what is changing it a little bit, though, is the fact that people are now running barefoot, which I think does change your gait a little bit. But my sense is that unless you're really, really, really motivated, you know, people are going to run in barefoot or minimalist shoes for a little while with lousy form, and it's not going to last. What those over padded shoes at least did, you know, and I know it sounds weird, but you know, over padded shoes allowed people to run with bad form. More people were able to run with bad form using those shoes. And so, to me, I'm not sure how this one is going to go, but it's going to be very interesting to me to see if people running with minimalist shoes that don't forgive anything, if after a month or two of developing very sore calves and, you know, sore feet, which they're going to get, you know, in the beginning anyway, if they stick with it. I think the jury's out on that one.
When people ask you what you do for a living, what do you say?
I usually say I'm an Alexander teacher.
Yeah. And then when people ask, what's Alexander, what do you say?
Well, if I like them, I give them an explanation. You know, I go into a little detail, or I ask my wife to explain what it is. And if if I really not, you know, and I'm usually, you know, pretty, you know, I try to tell people a little, sort of spread the word. But I might say, it's kinesiological re-education, and that usually stops it right there. And we move on to something more interesting, you know?
How often do people ask you what's the difference between Alexander and Feldenkrais? And if they do ask you that, what do you say?
Often enough to stiffen my neck up, you know. Or that in Pilates. They don't ask me what the difference is. They say, they're just the same, you know. Isn't Alexander like Pilates? And, yeah. And I say, well, yeah, I guess you're right, yeah. They're just the same. And then I don't feel like I have to defend the Alexander technique, you know. So, yeah, I used to get, you know, bore people to tears about, you know, the differences. And now, you know, in fact, when I was in L.A., somebody had contacted me, about running, and you know, he wrote back and said, "Oh, the Alexander technique, I've heard of it. Did you invent it?" Yeah. So it kind of reminds me of, you know, even though I'd had lessons for a year before I went and started training, when people asked me how I was going to support myself in London,